All right, for this video, let's take a look at the Develop section of LightRoom. You've seen me click on presets and things like that, but let's see what goes into a preset. So we have this picture. Looks a little lackluster. Now, this is a raw image that was copied over. If we go down here into the settings, you'll see there's a lens correction. Now, this was shot with a Canon EF 70-300 lens, which is correct when it came up. And you'll note that the screen just modified itself a little bit. There's a little bit of distortion in every lens. If you look at a lens, it's not flat glass, it's curved. The manufacturers go ahead and put together these profiles to allow you to modify the image that you're getting so that it matches what would be seen with the naked eye. So now that we've done that, let's look at some of the options that we've got. Now, there's some down here that a lot of people don't use much. Dehaze, as we pull this over, is a contrast modifier. Clarity brings up the sharpness a little bit, so we're going to hit those two. And look at the difference in the image with those two changes in place. Right? Take the dehaze out, and we'll take the clarity out. Now, what clarity is doing is adding that little bit of, it looks like sharpness to the image. Dehaze is good for taking away fog, is a good way to look at it. It clarifies the image behind it just a bit. Now, we're not going to see the fork buried in the back of this, just is not going to be enough in order to do that. But if we dial up the contrast, watch what happens. You'll notice two things. One, you can see things a little bit clearer, but two, look at how dark the image has become. All right, so go back to the original image. All right. Put the profile back on. But we're going to go back and we're going to up that contrast a little bit. Now, when you do this, the picture might have been shot perfectly well as far as the lighting was concerned, but because we're making a modification to it here, depending on what you're doing, you may have to increase that exposure just a little bit. Pull up the clarity a bit, pull up the dehaze a bit, and if you click on it and you've got a, this is on a PC, you scroll your middle mouse, you'll be able to roll these up and down fairly easily. Now, Vibrance pulls up colors that are off to the sides, more of the midtones, not something that's saturation is going to pull everything up. But look at the image that we have now. We have this image that has life to it. You've got that nice reflection down here, and you've got some more color. So let's take a look at our next image. Now, this one was shot from above in bright sunlight. So, as soon as we dial up the contrast, see how it changes? Now, what we didn't do on the other one is deal with the histogram up the top. This one doesn't really need it. The other one could use it just a bit. So what we're going to do, you hold down the Alt key and go to whites. And then back that off so that you have less on the screen. And we bring the blacks up so that we get a little bit of something on the screen. You'll notice the histogram, it's moving that histogram around. That's where I need to go, is more that way. Which adds a little bit more pop to the image. Okay, so we'll go back to our fife and drum here. Now, if you wanted to make it look more cinematic, you could take those shadows and push them more toward the blue, and take those highlights and push them more toward the yellow. There's the before, and there's the after. It has kind of more of a cinematic flair to it. When you want to remove these, all you have to do is double click in the center of the item, and it'll put it back into the mode that you were in before. So let's pull up the vibrance just a little bit, make those drums pop a little bit more. Don't have to do much here. I think I'm going to up the contrast just a bit more on here. Again, as I up the contrast, you'll notice the image starts to look a little darker. Double clicking on contrast to put it back to where it was. All right, so if we do this, that's where we started out. We dial that up just a bit and that up just a bit. Now, when you look at a preset, this is what the preset is doing. Now, because these aren't mine, I'm not going to show what the settings are for them. But let's take a look at like thick or kaleidoscope. Now, these are from Frono's Photo. And you can see the changes that they're making in the photograph. Those changes are the same changes that we're making here. So there's two things you can do. When you've got a set that you like for a series of photographs, you can save that preset. You can come over here, go up and do a plus and save it as a user preset. The other thing you can do with it is when you've got a series of photographs, you can go to sync and then pay attention to which ones you're changing in here. So I could just do color grading, I could do the details, I could do everything. If I wanted to, I could do the lens corrections, but again, the lens corrections specific for the photographs, you probably don't want to do that one too often, unless all the pictures were shot with the same lens and for some reason they didn't correct like the first one didn't. So again, we're going to look at another image here. And again, because this is shot in RAW, if we update the contrast on here, look at how much better the building looks. It seems to have more detail. You can pull the clarity up. And again, we're basically playing around with things that if you want to, you can do with these curves. This is just a quick way of doing it and making the changes that you want to see. Let's make sure the lens corrections, there it is. Right. And this is where we've got this new image. Turn it off, turn it on. And you can see the difference between the raw image that's a little bit more flat than what we end up here for the final image. And we'll do one more to give us a little bit of variety here. This was a Canon firing. And it's still got its settings on it, so let's take those settings off. Okay, so you can see that I cropped it. So we're going to go back and recrop. Because when you hit reset, it takes everything off. So we'll pull it up so that that's what we're looking at. We'll tear this down a little bit here so that we're just going to look at the Canon itself, because this will be good for looking at things like dehazing. So if we take dehazing and we turn it all the way up, See what it did to the day? Before, after. It really brings more life into things, and this is turned all the way up. It didn't do much to the smoke, but it took out the haze of the day and just clarified things a bit. I probably wouldn't go that high. Take it up here to about 60 maybe. Now we'll do clarity. And again, we'll turn clarity all the way up. Before, after. That's a little bit too much stuff. So take clarity out, we'll dial it up just a little bit. Now the colors I think look good, but if you notice right in here, we've got the cannon fire. So when the cannon fires off, not only is there the material that was holding the gunpowder in place inside the cannon, there's wadding material. So as we look in the smoke, we can see these little bits of material that got blown out of the cannon. So we're going to pay attention to this piece right here while we work a little bit more. Then take a look at the blacks. And we're going to bring those down. Again, if you watch the histogram at the top, you can see that it's kind of sliding to one side. Do the whites. And bring those up a little bit. That gives you a little bit more balance. You're not losing things off of the ends. We'll increase that contrast a little bit. But now what I really want to look at is the color. Now, if I were to pull saturation, I'll pull it up all the way so you can see what it looks like. That's saturating everything. But if we just go with the vibrance, see how it's changed what we're actually highlighting? So let's bring that up just a bit. And because we've done the other stuff, we're going to back the saturation off just a shade. We still have a good amount of fire coming out of that. And now the image looks a little more realistic. Because if you notice, before this was very dark because of the contrast changes that I made. By dialing back the saturation, I kind of fixed that back. But you can see the image looks a little flat right now, going with the raw image. And now we have this. Brings more life, it brings a little more depth to the image itself. And then, of course, there's the different types of masks. And I don't want to cover them too much. Let's just take a quick look at the masking options that are available here. Got subject, sky, and background. So let's see what happens if we do the background here. We'll just do a little play with the background. Let it run out and detect the background. Because this was shot, which you can't look at just yet, but this was shot with a 24-70, and I didn't have it opened all the way. But I did have it open deep enough that I could get these guys in from the distance I was at. And you notice that the AI is doing a poor job in this case because it's not sure what the subject of the photograph is. It actually thinks that this is the background. So this is out of the background and everything else is the background. So AI stuff sometimes does a good job and sometimes not. If you really want to get, I guess my point really is here, if you really want to get a good image with a narrow depth of field, pay attention to doing that with your lens rather than using it through any kind of software after the fact. If we were to back this out, you'll notice that these guys are not in focus because the focus was out toward the cannon. So that's a quick overview of the develop options. The best thing to do is to play with them as you go. Remember, you can always do a Control Z for a Windows machine to undo the change. It's actually storing each of your changes in series so that they can be undone. And you also have this option here if you're not sure what to do with the image and you don't have presets that you want to play with. So it looks pretty good. You can just click on Auto and let it try to figure out what to do with the image. It's kind of like what you would have gotten from a JPEG coming out of a camera. More or less came out the same way that I had it. But there's a few little modifications in here that it made. But that's what you can do with the develop options in LightRoom. So that's what I got for you this week, and I will talk to you guys all next week.